The anime starts at a village which is flourishing with great natural resources and people who are adventurers and hardworking. This village is called the Labyrinth. It is fenced in such a way that it shows a labyrinth physically. In this city where all the boys sit gambling and doing all their other things is Nick, a young boy who thinks like an adult. According to his adopted father, he is a light fighter in an adventurer group called the Countless Battle Arts. He has just two aims in his life. The first one, which is to get married and love the princess who he is dating. And his second dream is quite simple, which is to take the Countless Battle Arts to the #1 adventurer group in the whole village. Unfortunately, his dreams keep shattering one by one. The words of Argus, his adopted father, who took care of him as a kid and recruited him into the group, echo in his ears. He remembers when Argus tells him that they no longer want him as a member of their group because, according to Argus, their interest no longer aligns with each other. Just as though that disappointment is not enough for our poor Nick, he remembers the word of his beautiful princess, who he is dating, when she tells him she no longer is interested in the relationship with him, and she thinks they should break up. He remains at the table where she shares the news even after she leaves. He comments that the love of his life has also betrayed him and broken up with him. I can assume that you think that a great future awaits Nick. Maybe you should take a pause. Nick is presently a total idol geek. He is at a concert screaming and shouting the name of his favorite idol, Agate, as she presents her song to her team. He keeps direct eye contact with her as she sings with her team, and they present to their team. She asks her crowd which song she should present next, and they tell her she should present her blockbuster, which is the song The Saint Cheering Song. While in the crowd, he remembers how he felt after Argus sent him out of the team. He remembers that he was at the side of the pool, sitting there and thinking about his life. He wonders why Argus would do that to him, considering that Argus is his adopted father, who has taken care of him since he was a kid. He recalls that he approached Argus following an argument in the team. He asks Argus if he is meant to leave Garazzo, who probably is another member of the group, and asks if Garazzo should use the team's money to pay a woman. Argus tells him the conversation isn't about Garazzo. He says the conversation is about him, and he thinks Nick is now much more mature than when he took Nick as a child and brought him home. He says Nick is already thinking like an adult and making decisions like an adult, and their insight no longer aligns, so Nick should do well to find a place that fits him, and he should leave their group. After that conversation, he leaves Nick inside the room. While Nick is lost in his thoughts under the rain and depressed, a young girl comes to him with an umbrella. She tells him he is getting wet by the rain and asks if he needs help. He looks at her and bows his head back without giving her any attention. She gets angry that he behaves as if she is a stray dog, so she tries to command attention by going closer to him. She gives him a flyer telling him that she is an idol, although she is still a rookie idol, and one of her responsibilities as an idol is to share love and spread love among the people. So she can't leave him alone. She gives him a flyer inviting him to a concert the following day. She tells him the concert is at the public hall by the south gate the next day, and he should please come. He tells her he isn't interested, but she insists, and she leaves him there. The following day, he attends the concert and is so proud of the lead idol, the girl with blue hair, Agate. He takes some of their flyers as he returns to his house. At present, his home is filled with images of Agate and several pictures of her group. While lying on the bed, he decides it's time he goes to an adventurer meeting point to find a new group for himself. He goes there that evening in front of the house, and he decides that it's time to find an adventurer party where he can work and earn money so he can satisfy his new urge for idols. He screams and enters with great positivity in his mind, but all his positivity gets discouraged when he gets inside. He sees an adventurer looking at the poster, and he tries to talk with him, but he remembers Argus's words, that he isn't cut fit to be an adventurer. When the man turns to talk to him, he pretends as if he is training. He decides that if he uses his skills as a former adventurer there, he will see someone who will ask him to join their party, but it seems as though all of his words are just wishes. He finds it difficult to ask to join any group as he doesn't want to trust anyone again after what happened to him with Argus. Eventually, he leaves the guild that evening with no party at all. He stands outside thinking about what he will do when he goes to an adventurer bar to drink. He overhears as members of several adventurer groups celebrate and drink together, but the drink in front of him seems too bitter for him to drink. He ponders his issues as he sits alone at his table until a lady who looks like a noble with her long hair and beautiful hair comes to join him. Also, another man and an elf lady join them at the table. He sees as a man comes to speak with the noble lady, asking her if she will join him for an adventure. But she ignores him. He sees the gem on her hair and assumes that gem is an antique, and it would no doubt be really expensive. He looks at her dress and concludes that she could be a mage. He looks at the man beside her. He looks like a priest, and he is one. He sees that the man is drunk, and he instantly realizes that he could have drank earlier and didn't drink with the girls. He assumes he drank at a cabaret club as he smells of cosmetics. He assumes he's a healer without a party and finds out his tag as a priest is not on his neck. Then he concludes that he's an excommunicated priest. Then he looks at the elf girl. He sees she is a dragon kind. And looking at her fist, he could conclude that she is a veteran. However, she seems lost and without a party. After he finishes his unwarranted explanation, he decides to take a toast to Angus. He says fuck Angus and fuck being an adventurer, as he's no longer interested in being an adventurer. He also says to hell with his girlfriend, who has left him, and he's no longer interested in love too. He decides to make a toast to all he has lost, and he takes his drink. He drinks it and hits his cup on the table. Coincidentally, the other people drop their cups simultaneously, saying they will never trust humans. The noble mage remembers her story. The girl, Tiana, is a noble from a wealthy family called the House of Elenefelt. She trains with herself as she calls out the lightning strike, and all her masters are proud of her as they see her works. She walks away after her training, and she says that being a magician isn't about magic. She claims that learning magic for her is not about magic, but learning humanity. She says learning magic is learning humanity. She enters a restaurant and asks for Alex, her fiancé. She meets Alex and she happily tells him about her latest win, hoping that he will be happy for her, but just as she says it, Alex tells the lady beside him that that's her personality. She asks him who the girl is, and she says she is Line. From the house Delcott, Alex says Tiana likes behaving mighty, and she marks all her wants for life. He says she makes it look like the teachers are liars, and she keeps passing despite them knowing she isn't as good as she is. He says as a result of her good results, instead of his parents praising him as they usually do, they compare him to her, and he's no longer interested. He asks her who she sees in her eyes and walks out of the restaurant with Line. As a result, Tiana packs her books and bows to get her father before leaving the city. She gets to the Labyrinth hoping to find a job. She goes on a job search and she goes to 3 shops, but none of them wish to accept her. She walks away thinking of what to do with her life, then sees a flyer for a terrain dragon race ticket. She places a bet on a horse, and her horse wins. We know what they say about gambling, it causes addiction. She gets addicted to gambling and gambles all of her money until she doesn't have any money to pay rent. She decides to become an adventurer, but anyone who attempts to request she join their party runs from her after seeing her face. After her story, the priest Father Zem tells his story. He is from a temple in the city of Medlar called the God of Revelation. The temple has a solution to every problem in life, and he has a little girl, Miral, who helps him get a leaf called Rami. After Miral brings the Rami to him, she will sit on his legs and he will give her a coin. One day she returns late from bringing the Rami, and he asks her why. He pays her the coin, but she holds his hands and tells him she is in love with him. He tells her she's just a baby and informs her that he is a priest and doesn't have the right to love anyone, so she should care for herself. She releases his hands and takes her coin, then decides to frame him for rape. The following day, as he administers drugs to his patients, he receives visitors and sees Miral with them. He asks her what had happened, and the men say she was holding his coin all through. She tells him she trusted him and throws his coins at him. He is arrested and imprisoned for 3 months before he is banished from the city. He enters a restaurant where he sees that the attendant has hip issues. He heals her, and she gives him a gift the following day. She tells him he isn't a sinner and should go to the Labyrinth to become an adventurer. The last girl also says someone she trusted took something from her. They all get drunk, and the following day, Nick wakes up in a room with them. He asks them to leave his house, but Tiana tells him she is the owner of the house, and they should leave. As the others leave, Nick calls out for them. He tells them that instead of returning to their usual addiction, they should stay together and form a party since they all find it difficult to trust humans. The narrator says their party will eventually be the one to save the world in a long time. So, let's watch out for the next episode to see the party. The episode starts off with Nick and his party, the Masters of War, intimidatingly asking the receptionist for work. The receptionist, seemingly shy, also gets scared. However, an old lady intrudes on the conversation and asks them not to scare their cute little receptionist. The old lady recognizes Nick as an experienced adventurer from the Countless Battle Arts party. Our main protagonist, Nick, gets contented at the admiration given by the old lady. The old lady muses and again admires Nick, but this time his whole party. She then honors the return of the survival lady. Nick, along with his party, is left confused by the statement uttered by the old lady. Well, Nick didn't know Curran, his partner, miraculously survived and returned alone from a C-rank labyrinth. Even Curran doesn't know how famous she is, but no one knows what lies behind her spectacular smile. Before assigning the work to Nick's party, the old lady asks for the part's name. Nick mumbles, "Survivors." His party looks at him perplexed while Nick reasons that we will certainly make it back alive. That's what survivors are, so we will be called survivors. His whole party sees eye to eye with Nick. The old lady again asks for the party's name. This time, Nick and his comrades speak one voice vigorously, "Survivors." Before the team sets out on their adventure, Nick instructs his team that as adventurers who don't trust anyone, that leave their backs open, they should always follow three main rules. The survivors' three main laws. We don't interfere with each other's hobbies, says Tiana. Keep a good watch on our funds, Zim adds. And make it back alive no matter what, Curran concludes. The leader of the group, Nick, then assigns duties to each and every member of the group. Nick takes on accounting. Tiana makes sure it matches the actual money. Curran is held responsible for the safe and Zem is assigned to withhold the key. While Nick is carrying on his leadership speech, Zem cuts it and makes a point that Nick is assigning arduous duties to others and making a benefit for himself. Nick challenges Zem to give a backbone to his statement. Instead of Nick, Tiana replies that Nick has the least opportunity to touch the safe according to the assigned roles. However, this internal dispute is handheld strikingly by the leader himself. He shares a backstory, a life-saving lesson he learned from what happened at the Countless Battle Arts. Trust is something when you're not doubting each other. The party wants to have their trust in one another, but they can't give them their trust completely. In the broad daylight of the sun and in the gooey waterworks, Nick and his team start their venture. Easier said than done, Nick discusses the plan with his team about how they'll kill the monsters or floras, how they'll get the money from their cores, and how they'll distribute the money among the members. Just as the team enters a few steps into the labyrinth, they encounter their first target, a slime that appears to be rather cute and chewing on grass. The mission started rather easily. With no effort, Nick removes the core of the slime, dispatches it, and stores the core, which is a source of money for the group. The party then carries on its mission, appearing to be joyful and talkative. Nick muses to himself about the high hopes he has for the team. As the party moved further into the labyrinth, they encounter more slimes and remove their cores. While dispatching off of a living creature doesn't seem right. If they are left undispatched, miasma and monster grow rapidly, making the labyrinth larger and larger and imposing threats to the people. It's an absolute rule of nature, survival of the fittest. It sounds cruel and pessimistic, but when there are no means of collaborating with the monsters, people have to kill them in order to survive. While proceeding, Tiana gets careless talking about her achievements of taking down goblins and other monsters. A bigger slime ejects a goofy projectile, as lethal as a banana peel, and she falls. Nick tells her that bigger slime can eject a goofy projectile, and that only if Tiana had been careful, it wouldn't have happened. Trying to accommodate her negligence, she unleashes her attack, Icicle Dance, but instead of shooting for the slime, she unconsciously unleashes it elsewhere, and Curran becomes the target of her attack. Fortunately, Curran blocked the attack with her sword, but her trust is broken. Curran is infuriated. She ignores Tiana's reasons and warns her that she might also make a mistake like this. Tiana is left shocked at her response. And from there, the team carries on its mission of the two of its members having a grudge against each other. In no time, the team reaches the top floor of the labyrinth, and here they find the biggest slime they've encountered so far, the boss of the gooey waterworks. Tiana, with her mood off, tries to show off, ignores the team, and goes for the big slime all on her own. In her own rage and stubbornness, she unleashes a big icy spear on the big slime, and with just one attack, it lives no more. However, with the deadly attack, the slime rips up and its goofy constituents are splashed on the whole team, leaving them filthy and goofy. The team exits from the labyrinth and takes a bath in the stream, flowing near the labyrinth. While Curran is still thinking of the incident that might cause her to lose her life, Nick explains why had the slime scattered its goo all over the place. Big slimes react to strong magic. That's the reason Nick gives to Tiana. Once refreshed, Nick gathers the whole team to regain the trust between Tiana and Curran. He tells all of his weak points to his friends, shows them all the pieces of equipment he has, and tells his team what they can do and can't. He says to his team that they're wary of each other because they don't have a clue about what they're capable of. And once you know all about them, you can give them your trust. At least that's how Nick thinks. Tiana questions him if he thinks each and every member of the team to open themselves and share their weak points. But Nick replies with a no. Nick just wants his team to stay united and trust each other till the very end. Stay loyal to each other as long as they are part of his team. Zem also shares his weak points with the team and tells them that he's almost very delicate to magic, fist, or any sort of combat, and cannot manage to win one battle. But as a part of the team, he's really useful. The team cannot survive without a healer, especially one who also has put forward his devotion, loyalty, and trust in healing others. While Zem was carrying on his speech, Tiana goes to Curran, bends down in an apologetic manner, and tells her capabilities and weak points. She's a mage, best suited with water and wind magics, also good with their combination, lightning magic. But although she can use fire and earth magic, she's not that good at using them. She confesses her fault and apologizes to Curran. She is defenseless against earth and fire magic and quick range attacks. After saying all of this, Curran returns to the log when she was previously sitting on, and sits down but appears to catch a cold. Curran uses her flame magic to make a fireplace in the middle of this wilderness, just to help her friend warm up. And with this, the whole team gains its trust, and is once again united as one. At noon, the team stands up and leaves for its next destination, the Goblin Forest, densely populated with goblins that are pretty weak on their own. But as a pack, they can be tough to deal with. Just as Nick was saying this, Zem is attacked with a goblin, but Nick slashes the goblin and saves Zem. Attacking humans like Monster feels even crueler than attacking living slimes. But what has to be done is to be done, all with no regrets and no guilt. Just after killing the first humanoid monster, the dead goblin's friends attack the team, but the survivors, united as one, fight back and easily kill all of them. Tiana uses her magic to search to get the location of the goblins and finds where the majority of the goblins are. Nick and the others don't know that Tiana can use such long-range searches, and they are all admiring Tiana for her practical magic. But this is where the challenge really starts. Tiana senses a monster, much stronger than the goblins themselves, within the pack. Zem asks if anyone knows what the creature could be. Whatever it is, it surely poses a serious threat to the team and is far more deadly than any monster they've faced today. Nick answers to Zem that it could probably be an ogre, an evolution of hobgoblin, and without a doubt, far stronger than any grunt. For someone as strong as Nick himself, it is a challenging fight. Even if they work together, the smallest miscalculation and mistakes could be the cause of their deaths. But what's even worse is that they do not currently have much experience working as a team, which makes the chances of mistakes even higher. Retreat is not an option here, because if they do, the goblins will group up with other packs and become even stronger. It would be more difficult to fight them than it is now. They would also impose threats on people living near the forest, but the most important reason is that it's a financial resource for the team. And since they're currently having a hard time, they cannot compromise on any coming money. The team then discusses its plan on taking down the ogre. Since it has high resistance against magic, the vanguard of the team, Tiana, is of no importance in the main fight. The only ones who can take the ogre down are Nick and Karen. Nick then assigns the roles to each member of the team for the fight. Tiana, as a long-range magic user, will distract the ogre. Zem will use his supportive magic to empower the team and heal them in case of any injuries, while Karen and Nick will slice down the ogre, disposing of it and taking its core. With their lives at stake, the team then enters into the fight, and there it was, the sturdy and dominant ogre, calling out for the fight. The fight begins. Zim empowers the attacker, Nick and Karen. Tiana takes down the goblins with her magic, while Karen and Nick charge in for the big beast. No matter how many goblins they slice, they keep coming again and again. They aren't going to go down easily without a fair fight. Although the team didn't have their full trust in each other before, they have to be careful now, not to leave an opening for anyone to come in, strike, and get the advantage of one another. In this fight, it was completely different. It was a live or die situation for them. And as survivors, they had chosen to survive according to the survivors' 3 main laws. In order to survive, they had to have their full trust in others. In order to fight and cut the ogre's sturdy skin, Karen has to charge in, leaving her back open and having trust in her team to protect her back. Karen keeps repeating, "I have to trust them," sheathing her big heavy sword with powerful fire magic, and slicing the ogre's sturdy skin in just one blow. That's how teamwork leads to victory. Without any one of the members, they certainly would not have won this battle. But today, they kept their trust in one another and successfully won. After they had won the battle, Nick goes to the corpses of the goblins and collects their cores. He also offers Tiana to collect them, but Tiana prefers to stay away from Nick's hobby of collecting the cores. While Nick was collecting the cores, Karen was thinking of her past. They didn't teach her anything back then because they said Karen doesn't have to learn anything. When Nick is isolating the ogre's core, he tries, but it didn't get separate. So he puts in more force, and with a jerk, he falls on Karen. While they hear the cracking sound of the ornament Karen had in her eyes, it was broken apart. What could be the meaning of this? Maybe Karen has escaped the dark past she once knew? And what awaits ahead is a bright future with people whom she gives her trust and calls friends. The dragonkind kin is a very proud kin. However, they are tasked with a major duty, which is to follow every human who is to become the hero. And they can save the world together. Curran, a girl from the dragonkind kin, is seen on the floor. She wonders if the life she is living is considered real, and she stands up to walk around the Labyrinth city. One thing about the Labyrinth city is that if you aren't smart, you will be outsmarted. Curran walks around mindlessly, reminding herself of the great works of the dragonkind kin. As she sees a man who sells a collection of beautiful pendants, pretty things are for the eyes, and Curran isn't an exception. She falls in love with the collection, and she goes nearer to them to check it with no abstract intention of touching any of the pendants or holding one. As she arrives at the shop owner advises her to go nearer to the products and check them if she wants to do so. Following his advice, Curran takes the pendant that she loves, and she admires it. Every eye wants beautiful things, so she asks for the price of the pendant. The shop owner tells her it's 20,000 Dina. She certainly does not have that much, so she looks at the pendant disappointed, knowing that she can't buy it. She drops it reluctantly and turns to leave. If only she had known, she wouldn't have touched the pendant at all, as when she turns, the shop owner gasps angrily. He calls her back and tells her that since she knows she is from the dragonkind kin, with long nails, she shouldn't have touched the pendant at all. He shows her the pendant and shows her a scratch on it. He tells her she's the one who scratched it, and she has to pay for it. She tries to support herself, claiming she didn't do any damage to the pendant, but he keeps insisting that the pendant was okay when she took it and scratched it when she returned it. He asks her if she should report her to the authority, and says she looks like she has just arrived from the village, and they don't behave like that in the Labyrinth. He tells her that since she wants the pendant, he will give her the scratched one for half of the real price, which is 10,000 Dina. She stands there, not knowing what to do as the shop owner threatens her. Kalios arrives, and he reminds her of his earlier warning that she shouldn't leave the house for shopping without telling him. Then he goes to speak with the shop owner, who insists that it's Curran who destroyed his pendant. He takes the pendant, telling Curran that she should scratch it again. The shop owner protests. He says she shouldn't scratch it if they don't want to pay. and the pendant is still his property. So Kalios brings out a coin of 10,000 Dyna, which he gives the shop owner for the pendant, and he tells Curran to scratch it. Although she is reluctant to do so, knowing that it will destroy the pendant, he forces her to do it. When she does, she shows the pendant to Kalios, and it is destroyed beyond repair. It's not just the tiny scratch that was on the pendant when the shop owner was shouting. Kalios asks her if there is a way she can inflict a smaller sign on the pendant, but she tells him her nails can scratch mildly. So he goes to the shop owner and brings out the original pendant where he had kept it behind his neck. Apparently after Curran turned, the shop owner took the pendant she touched and hid it, and brought out a scratched pendant to accuse her. Kalios tells Curran that it's a new trick used to trick people, and he threatens to report the seller to the authorities. He says he will only forgive him if he can give him the original pendant and the money he paid. He collects the pendant and asks Curran if she really wants the pendant. She replies affirmatively, so he gives it to her, and they continue their journey. While walking, Curran keeps repeating the phrase about the duty of the dragonkind kin. She says that her duty is to find the human who will become the hero, so that they can save the world together. She says that she thinks Kalios will be the hero, and she just has to stay with him and save the world. She gathers more trust in Kalios because of what he did for her earlier, and she believes he really has her back. She returns to her room, and she thinks about her duty of saving the world. She prepares for her night's adventures, and she packs her load. She holds all her bags as Kalios comes to call her. He tells her they are leaving for their adventure, and she's about to leave with her bags. He tells her she doesn't need to carry the bag along, and there is no way anyone can steal anything in her bag. He advises her to trust them and says they will all return that night, so there's no reason why she should carry her bag along. He hopes their adventure will be successful and says they will soon be back. She's glad that she's going to fight again after the war. She remembers that it is the first time she is on a team after the war has ended, and she expresses her gratitude that she found a good team to join for her first attempt. She believes in all of his words. She stands up and follows him and his teammates for the adventures. And when they get there, they ask her to kill the first animal they encounter. She hits the animal and kills it on the first try. The other members of the group pack the animal, and they cut it off so they can carry it away. She asks to join them in the parking so she won't be useless, but they laugh at her, asking her why they would do that if she accepts to do all the work. Kalios advises her that as a team, a person does not have to do all of the work, they have to dedicate it, and a person should be in charge of what he or she does best. So she should concentrate on what she does best, and they will do the rest. She accepts his advice and tells him that she trusts him. They ask her to believe in them as a team, reassuring her that teams will never leave each other. They all leave that section of the labyrinth to enter deeply into the labyrinth to fight the pot snake. Before getting there, Kalios tells her the pot snake is a very sly and deadly snake who hides in a pot. He tells her that when the snake is in the pot, nobody can harm him, even with magic. And if they force him out of the pot, he will get angry and attack. So they have to dedicate that work to her. She will be the one to tease the snake out of the pot, and as a result, the snake will target her. They promise her that they will stay behind her and stop the snake from killing her, so she can defeat the snake. They ask her to trust them and to give her all as a member of the team. They eventually get to the pot snake. He's inside the pot, and when Curran goes nearer, she hits the pot and the snake comes out. She dodges all its attacks and it tries to attack it, but she fails. The snake starts bringing out a green cover. It covers itself in a green cover and she doesn't know what it means. So she asks Kalios what the snake is doing. He tells her the snake is just trying to intimidate her, so she shouldn't accept. She keeps fighting and the snake overpowers her. She feels weak and calls out for Kalios, but she can't find him, so she collapses. He comes out with his friends and they laugh at her. They reveal that the snake poisons the first person who comes nearer to him, but after the poison gets very weak, they kill the snake and leave her there despite her pleas that they should help her. She struggles out of the place alone and she remembers that she has to find her way back to the inn to get the dragonkind gem. She remembers that when the gem was given to her and the warning that the gem has to be with her every time and grow with her. She staggers to the inn, and when she gets there, the innkeeper remembers her as Kalios' colleague. They tell her Kalios has said that she died in the forest. She asks for her loads, but they tell her Kalios has taken them away, and he tells them he wants to return them to her relatives. She comes outside of the inn crying. She remembers when Kalios told her she should trust him. She attempts to remove her pendant and throw it away, but she couldn't. She holds it in her hands and bows it on the ground. She summons her strength the following day, and she goes around asking for Kalios. She asks everyone in the city if there is anyone that knows Kalios, but there is no one. She keeps walking until she eventually gets hungry. She looks at the money in her bag, and she wonders if it will be enough for her. She stands in front of a restaurant and she thinks of what to do. She eventually sees a man who passes by her. She figures he is familiar. When she tries to think of where she knew him from, she overhears other people confirming her suspicion that he is Fifth, the solo diner who created a party alone. He is strong enough to enter the labyrinth alone, and he enjoys good food. She sees Fifth ordering a food, and she follows him. She orders the same food and she enjoys it. She follows him into another restaurant and eats the same food as him. She keeps following him to every restaurant that he enters. She follows him around until they get to a restaurant. Inside the restaurant, a man passes beside Fifth and mistakenly knocks over his sword. Curran uses her tail to hold it up for him, and he picks it up, saying it was very important to him. He appreciates her and attempts to leave, but she calls him back to appreciate him. He doesn't hear her. He instead says it's the good food of that restaurant that made him forget about his sword. As he leaves, Curran appreciates him in her mind, saying he has allowed her to forget all that is hurting her. She decides to continue eating good food, and food can only be bought with money, which is why she decided to find a job. Nick, upon hearing her story, feels bad for breaking her pendant. He goes to several markets trying to find that pendant, but he can't find it. While he keeps up with his search, he figures he might not find it. Aya comes to meet there. He tells her he is trying to find the pendant, but he can't, so she tells him to meet Curran and ask her where she bought the pendant so he can get it. He refuses to do so, saying he doesn't want to because he thinks she is still angry. She calls him an egoist and says it is his ego that is speaking. She says having an ego isn't a bad thing, but he should channel it into apologizing. He goes to meet Curran while she is buying a meal. She offers him the meal, and it is very hot. As he eats it, it burns him. She laughs at him cheerfully, and he figures she is usually calm. They leave to talk, and she tells him she's fine with what has happened. She says she's happy with the way they are, and she prefers it to how she had been living her life before. They all meet at the bar after their failed adventure, and the other adventurers laugh at them. After staying silent for a while, someone comes to call them. They meet a woman who tells them she wants them to hunt in the Labyrinth of Bonds. They assume it's all a joke, as Nick does not understand. They ask her what she wants from them, and she says she wants the Holy Sword, the Sword of Bonds. The adventurers haven't made their decision, however, any decision they make will mark a change in their life regardless. Since the guild had just to hire them to find the Sword of Bonds, Nick starts negotiating with them very thoroughly. He sets it up so that they get paid per excursion, even if they don't find the sword. Moreover, he also asks for a map, a list of monsters in the area, a list of all the places that have already been searched, details on the sword, and a guaranteed minimum price regardless of the condition of the sword. After the contract was finished, they started exploring the labyrinth. They encounter stone-like monsters, but Curran easily kills them with her fire breath. According to the information given to them, the Sword of Bonds amplifies a party's power based on the bonds between them. Nick finds this ironic, but the others point out it's actually perfect for their group because they're trusting each other more and more. Nick laughs at their camaraderie, but he still feels guilty about Curran's pendant that he broke. While exploring the hallway, the group is slowly recognizing that the labyrinth seems a little weird. They have been walking along a corridor, built with everything at a regular spacing. As they walk ahead, the lights behind them shut down while the ones in front light up. Tiana also points out that even the monsters are artificial. They are also careful to check for secret passages along the walls. Behind them, a security camera quietly zooms at them, and an old man's voice wonders if these new adventurers can make it all the way to his location. Following the guild's map, the survivors go down a flight of stairs to a floor labeled B12. Nick notices a side corridor with a dead end lit by a solitary lamp. Zem checks the map and confirms that there are indeed dead ends with lamps. However, Nick points out that the information they received says that the lamps were red. The one before them is colored green. Nick decides to check it out despite the others' hesitation. He reminds them that their mission is to explore, so they should be thorough in exploring. Furthermore, he also smells money. When Nick reaches the end of the corridor, the wall beside him suddenly pulls open and a secret passage reveals itself. The others were surprised since according to their information, that should have just been a normal wall. Meanwhile, another security camera is watching them, with the same earlier voice muttering that here is where their problems are going to start. The survivors enter the hidden passage and find themselves in a dark, wide room, with numerous glass cases lined up inside. They wonder if they are supposed to find the sword in all these cases, but Nick notices a strange case in the distance faintly glowing red. Nick confidently walks toward it and tells the others it's probably there. Zem and Kurun follow him with Tiana still feeling suspicious, so she stops them. She casts Detect Magic and surveys the surroundings. However, she finds no magic within a 1 kilometer radius. She tells them that she's not sure if that means it's safe, or if somebody is blocking her search. Nick points out that they just have to find who that somebody might be and report that to the guild too. He then continues walking toward the pedestal. When they near the case, the lights suddenly turn on and an old man's voice reverberates across the room. It congratulates them for overcoming great trials to reach that room, and they are worthy of possessing his powers. The group traces the sound and figures it's coming from the sword hilt nestled in the case. Tiana wonders if it's the Sword of Bonds, but Nick doesn't think so. First of all, it's only the hilt of a sword, and there is no actual blade. Kurun wonders if it might be broken. Tiana suggests it might be a magic sword, and the wielder's magic forms the blade. The sword hilt is getting angry at the 4 adventurers ignoring him, but Nick tells him they don't have time to learn the names of broken swords, since they're busy looking for the Sword of Bonds. Finally, the sword hilt informs them that it is indeed the legendary Sword of Bonds that they seek, but the survivors don't believe him. They continue arguing whether it's broken or a magic sword. So the sword hilt continues to explain he is a proud sacred blade that only helps those who value justice and friendship. He is the angel-class psychic weapon, the Sword of Bonds. Nick finally believes him and promises to not drop him before they can put him in the bag. This confuses the sword hilt and he asks why don't they just equip him. Nick explains he uses short swords while Kurun only uses her dragonbone sword. The sword hilt asks them what they plan to do with him then, and the survivors simultaneously answer that they're just going to sell him. The sword hilt can only scream in sadness and frustration. He tells them that he doesn't want to be sold, and he just ends up in some warehouse somewhere. He complains about how many years he had wasted after being deceived by the liars at the guild. A guild sealed him in a labyrinth, saying it would help him find someone worthy to wield him. However, he waited and waited in darkness for years, but nobody came. He then realized that they never intended to let anyone have him. Nick informs the hilt that he's sympathetic to his story, but they all just got bills to pay. However, when Nick picks up the sword hilt, a hidden mechanism suddenly activates, and a mysterious fluid flows from a hidden chamber. The sword apologizes to the survivors since the Guardian system has been activated. They won't be able to leave the room without defeating the Amalgam Golem. The room suddenly shakes as someone breaks into the room. From the dust, the Amalgam Golem finally emerges. It's a golem made up of a metallic liquid with a huge glowing red eye on its face. The golem walks towards them and delivers a powerful punch at the survivors. Everyone jumps back from the attack, and Tiana immediately casts a spell. Large icicles quickly shoot out from her staff and embed themselves in the liquid golem. The golem roars in pain and Kurun dashes forward to attack. The sword hilt tries to warn her and Nick realizes something is wrong and shouts for her to get back. Unfortunately, he was too late. The golem shoots back the large icicles embedded in its body at Kurun. She manages to block one with her sword, but another hits her right in her stomach. This forces her to lower her guard and another icicle hits her in the head, knocking her back with tremendous force. Zem immediately runs to heal Kurun, while Nick puts the Sword of Bonds on his back and runs forward to distract the golem. If they're not careful, the survivors are going to die. He slashes at the golem's foot, but his short sword just passes through the liquid golem's limbs. He shouts for the others to retreat and head for the exit. The others run back while Nick continues dodging the golem's blow. Even though he can't damage it, he knows that if he keeps attacking, it will just focus on him and give time for everybody to get away. The Sword of Bonds in his back explains that the golem's body is composed of nanomachines, so ranged or sharp weapons won't touch it. The sword implores Nick to use him, and after they make it out of there, they can do what they want with him. It's his first and last request as a weapon. Nick draws him from his back, and a gold magical blade forms from the hilt. At the other side of the room, Kurdan, Zem, and Tiana are attacking the passageway that suddenly closed up. They notice a bright light coming from behind them, and when they look back, they see Nick wielding the Sword of Bonds. Meanwhile, the Sword of Bonds carefully looks at each one of the survivors, and upon observing Kurdan, tells Nick to envision Kurdan in her mind and shout Union. Nick is confused by the sword's orders, but he decides to do it. He shouts Union, but nothing happens. He angrily shouts at the sword, but the sword itself is confused too. The golem attacks Nick again, and Nick counterattacks with the Sword of Bonds. This time, the limb he attacks gets cut off and falls to the ground. The sword, however, tells him his blade still can't kill the golem. The cut-off limb suddenly morphs into a tiny golem and attaches itself to Nick's foot. Nick gets distracted, and the large golem swats him away, blasting him across the room and into the hole in the floor from where the golem came from. The other survivors shout for Nick, and they come up with a plan. Tiana casts another spell and freezes the golem. This time, the golem stops in his tracks. She then tells Kurdan to get Nick while the golem is incapacitated. Kurdan jumps into the hole, leaving Tiana and Zem alone with the golem. The golem slowly breaks free of its icy prison by discarding the parts of itself that froze. Zem heals Tiana while Tiana casts freezing again on the golem. They can't do anything more than buy time. At the hole in the ground, Nick finds himself underneath a ton of rubble. Kurdan comes to him and starts digging him out. Nick tries to tell her to run with the others, but Kurdan shouts back that they should go back together. Nick then apologizes for breaking Kurdan's pendant, since he knew it was important to her. Kurdan explains that her last party leader gave it to her, and she still couldn't believe they betrayed her and left her. She kept hoping that one day she'd wake up and find them there like always. Seeing the pendant made her believe in Kalios. She chose to spend her time with her memories instead of the people around her. So when the pendant broke, it wasn't a bad thing for her. Kurdan continues digging for Nick, and when she finds him, offers him a hand. She pulls Nick out, and the two smile at each other. The sword tells Nick to say the word Union once again. Back in the room, the golem is almost on top of the two casters. Tiana smiles and tells them they did great even without Nick and Kurdan. She then shouts at the golem, but the golem suddenly explodes in a bright light that also blinds Tiana and Zem. When Tiana and Zem open their eyes, they are shocked to see Nick, but with Kurdan's hair and dragon-like armor. The Sword of Bonds informs the Nick-Kurdan hybrid that the golem has a core that moves at random throughout its liquid metal body. Nick-Kurdan has bathed themselves in flames and attacks the golem that is attempting to reform. With a flash of their sword, the golem is wrapped in fire, destroying the body and pulverizing the core. Nick-Kurdan then faints and they morph back to separate people. After their adventure, the survivors go back to the guild. There, Nick demonstrates the sword by summoning its aura blade. The others nervously hype up the sword while a kid with white hair and black keeps stating it's not that impressive. The guild agrees to pay them, but they also ask who the mysterious kid in black is. The girl introduces herself as Kijuna, a new member of the survivors. The guild owner gets curious since her name means bonds, the same as the sword. After the group leaves, they sigh happily since their plan worked. They found a stock of mass-produced copies of the sword which they can give to the guild. Meanwhile, Kijuna thanks her parallelization function that lets her have a human form. Nick scolds her for using her name when she introduces herself, but Tiana points out that sentient magic items have a lot of powers tied to their names. Like if they named her Mop, she might gain the power to clean up their rooms. Back at their inn, the survivors happily divide the money they earn. Kijuna asks them if they are going to the tavern with their money, but the group explains their number one rule to her: no interfering with other people's hobbies. Nick then leaves to go to an idol concert, while the others leave to do their own hobbies. Tiana invites Kijuna to go to the races with her, and Kijuna happily accepts. Outside, Kijuna's curious eyes can't help but look at the surroundings, from the trees to the bugs on the ground. Tiana pats Kijuna's head and praises her for waiting thousands of years in the dungeon. Kizuna gets annoyed since Tiana's treating her like a kid. However, she just jokingly calls her Mop and runs away with Kizuna chasing after her. With her newfound freedom, Kizuna is amazed at everything around her, from the unchanging course of the stars in the sky to the people arguing in the marketplace. She also notices the dust on the windowsills and even the weird taste of Nick over his teen idol posters. From the trash in the street and to the adventurers in the bars, Kizuna finds the whole wide world beautiful, and she's not afraid to shout it in the middle of the streets. Meanwhile, the other survivors find this behavior weird. She also notices Tiana's igniter, complimenting its history and modifications. Tiana smiles at the praise of her beloved igniter that was given to her by her master, and she compliments Kizuna back. Kizuna happily dances with the compliment and prompts the others to compliment her too. After all the shenanigans, Nick starts the party meeting of the survivors. For today's topic, he has decided to give out different tasks to the other members to keep their funds safe. He gives Kurun the lockbox containing their money, Zem the key to the lockbox, and Tiana a magic abacus. After giving out the task, Nick drops a few coins that they will put in the lockbox. Zem counts the coins equaling 230 Dyna, and Tiana asks Nick what the coins are about. Nick then reveals that it is the overall wealth of the survivors, shocking the others at how low their remaining funds are. And so Nick announces that they should just go make more money by doing more jobs. In the past, before she became an adventurer, Tiana was a student at a prestigious school. However, due to unfortunate circumstances involving her fiancé and some nasty accusations, she was kicked out. Tiana is packing up her few books and other belongings when her master enters the classroom. Her master kindly reminds her that she might not be a student anymore, but she still and will always be a mage. He then hands her an igniter as a farewell gift. Tiana thanks her master, and in her mind laments that not only was she kicked out, but her master was also caught up in the scandal with her. She had ruined her career and dashed his hopes of ever attaining the title of sage. Her master then tells her that even though she's now free, freedom can be quite restrictive. Humans want to be free, but we also want somebody to need us. Humans are indeed strange creatures. Her master then tells her that it was just a joke and starts laughing uncontrollably. Tiana finds it weird that even though she ruined her master's life, he still gets to laugh and joke with her like nothing bad happened. Before she leaves the classroom, her master turns around and gives her one last lesson. According to him, she should always know who she is, what she's learned, and what she can do. That will be her treasure that no one else can take from her. After the cryptic advice, her master goes back to laughing hysterically and Tiana walks out of the school. However, Tiana opens her eyes and she's back to reality in her room at the inn working as an adventurer. She wonders whether she can just wake up one day and everything will be back to the way it was before. Before she was an adventurer, she would wake up in her bed in the mansion, surrounded by pillows and fluffy blankets, and wonder what things she'd talk about with her fiancé, or what new magic she'll learn from her master. As each of the survivors wakes up, Kurun in her room with her sword, and Zem curled up alone in his bed. Each of them has this lingering regret in their past and wonders if they can just go back. Meanwhile, in Nick's dream, he had just given his girlfriend Claudine her birthday gift. Unfortunately, she starts spouting that it's not enough and she wants more. She starts exclaiming that she wants to see everything that has changed since she was sealed away. Nick then wakes up from his nightmare and finds out that Kizuna was sending his sleep talk directly into his brain. That would explain Claudine's rant in his dream. Now that he's awake, Nick wonders if he too can just wake up in the past before everything went wrong in his life. The group then reconvenes at their usual place for their daily meeting. Unlike all the other members wanting to go back to the past, Kizuna just happily exclaims that she has no past she wants to return to. Her time today with the others is the most fun she's ever had. The others are blinded by her optimism and innocent attitude, and they all wish they could just be like her. For their job today, they head to an ice labyrinth, and their target is a Rasetsu ogre. The group uses Kizuna's skill, telepathy, so they can talk to each other without alerting anyone else. Utilizing this handy skill, they were able to sneak up near their target and watch him, so they could plan their course of attack. Zem idly wonders if they beat the ogre before, but Nick points out that it's not the same one. Tiana explains that ogres are reborn each time that miasma gets thick. Curran, meanwhile, is just appreciating the fact that they can chat with everyone telepathically. Kizuna scolds her and tells her that her telepathy is not for chatting and having fun, so they should just use it for serious stuff. The others start appreciating their telepathy when Curran suddenly speaks, not from their hiding spot, but all the way from the ogre's side, happily and mindlessly testing the range of their telepathy. Tiana berates her for being too far ahead, but Kizuna takes this chance to dash forward immediately. She tells the others that her true power isn't telepathy, but in her blade. The Resetsu ogre finally notices them and turns around. Nick exasperatedly asks what the point of telepathy is if they are just going to wing their attack at the end. The ogre swings its club of ice at Kizuna, but Kizuna deftly blocks him with a sword. The ogre jumps back and fires an icicle at her, but Kizuna deflects the projectile. She then quickly teleports to the ogre's face and attacks. When the ogre blocks her attack, she activates her skill Parallel, creating multiple copies of herself. The other survivors members are surprised by her skills as she battles with the ogre all on her own. Meanwhile, Kizuna can still hear all their reactions since the telepathy skill is still active. Kizuna and her clones then surround the ogre and attack from its blind spot, bringing it down and defeating it. The others walk up to Kizuna and Nick mentions that he feels tired for some reason. Kizuna reveals that she's using Nick's stamina and magic to activate her skills, so that's probably why. Nick feels that he should be more concerned with the revelation, but he's just too amazed at Kizuna's skill. Not only at magic, but also with the sword. Kizuna explains to the others that her sword skills were installed on her when she was still in the developmental stage during her creation. She had absorbed the techniques of a swordsman who used her in the past. Not only that, she still has her most powerful technique, Union. However, Nick confesses that he's not planning on using Union at all, since it makes them collapse into exhaustion afterwards. Nevertheless, the group expresses their gratitude to Kizuna since they have someone they can rely on. They then start talking about what they should do after the job, irritating Kizuna again for using her telepathy for chit-chat. Back in the city, Kizuna tags along with Curran and Nick to go for a meal. To Nick's surprise, the restaurant Curran chooses is the same one that Nick had in his dream. The three enter and order their food. Curran starts extolling how fish should be cooked, and Nick jokingly points out that she does go through their food budget. But Curran just reminds her of their first rule, not to interfere with each other's hobbies, earning her some apologies from Nick. While eating, Nick's dream seems to be coming true since he suddenly hears Claudine. And there she is, sitting in a booth inside the restaurant, being given a birthday gift. Instead of him, however, it was a random kid giving the gift to her. Nick can't help but overhear their conversation. Claudine starts crying and tells the kid that she has to go, unfortunately, back to her hometown since her mother is sick. Moreover, she needs to find the money for the 1-month carriage ride. The gullible kid takes pity on the crying Claudine and offers her the money she needs. Before anything can happen further, Nick interrupts them and joins them in their booth. He then tells Claudine he didn't know they already moved. She told him before that her mother only lives 3 days away, but now it's 1 month away. He also asks her how she has 2 birthdays in 1 year. Nick just keeps revealing Claudine's lies one by one to the kid. Claudine gets defensive and takes the birthday gift. However, Nick tells her that if she sells the gift, that would be an automatic fraud charge. Claudine tries to leave and take the boy with her, but Nick just reminds her that if she continues, she'll get a bounty on her head. Claudine gets angry at Nick for giving away her scam and throws the gift at Nick before angrily walking out. Nick returns the gift to the kid, who is sad that he was just being played along for a con. Curran then calls Nick to continue their meal. Later, the survivors are having another team meeting to discuss what quest they should take up next. Most gathering quests involve plants that only bloom in the labyrinths. While ores and jewels can be found in cave labyrinths, Nick's discussion gets interrupted when beer is suddenly poured over his head. Claudine has come back and she's not alone. A muscular beast man accompanies her. He is another member of Claudine's party, the Iron Tigers. The beast man introduces himself as Leon and intimidates Nick for ruining Claudine's scam earlier. However, Nick was unfazed and just mentions that Claudine was planning to run away from the Iron Tigers with the money. He's trying to sow discord between Leon and Claudine. Claudine snaps back that he's just bitter because she dumped him. Leon tells Nick that they should take it outside and walk away. Nick consoles his teammates that he won't need help and follows Leon. In an alley outside, Nick immediately goes into a fighting position. However, Leon suddenly bows his head and apologizes to Nick. Leon then tells him that he knew what Claudine did to him before and Claudine underestimated him. He also thanks Nick for calling out Claudine's scam. Leon then offers Claudine to him, since Claudine conned a lot of people and made lots of enemies. She was able to make a lot of money for the Iron Tigers, but it might be time for her to leave the group. Leon also pointed out that Nick himself was at a party with a noble girl, a dragon lady, and a naive priest. So he was probably running his own scam himself. The thought of robbing Kuran or Tiana makes Nick laugh. Then he delivers a surprise uppercut straight to Leon's jaw, knocking him over. Leon gets up and pulls out his sword, but Nick easily disarms him and pins him to the ground. Nick then tells Leon that he does want money. But would scamming people really be worth it, even if he made a fortune by taking advantage of other people? Would the ale he buys taste good? Nick is then blasted away by another one of the Iron Tigers, a sorcerer kid. The sorcerer is then knocked over by Kuran, who suddenly shows up with her tail wrapped around the sorcerer's foot. Nick walks toward them and thanks them for their help. Leon readies himself to attack again, but the guildmaster finally shows up and scolds them all for causing a commotion. The guildmaster then tells them that if they follow the correct rules, she has no intention of stopping them. This confuses Nick, but Leon just accepts her condition and suddenly challenges Nick to a mathematics bare-knuckle battle. Now, not only Nick is confused, but the other survivors are too.